About 4 months ago, DJI announced what is probably the most unique camera that I've ever seen. And I did a really in-depth review all about it. And I had some issues with it, especially the weight, and also what lenses you could put on, because you are limited. But overall, I was incredibly impressed with what it was capable of. It's actually only just started shipping though, about a week or so back. And there has been a few changes since then. Some good, and one in particular not so good. So that's why I wanted to do this little update video, just to go through them with you. Yes, a short video from me. There has been a lot of discussion about this camera. I don't know how many people have actually ordered it. If you're interested in buying one, you can actually get one right now. Well, as in right now when I'm filming this. It may change when you're watching this, but I had a quick look and most people have them in stock, which is really rare for new camera launches. But there's been a massive gap of 4 months from the announcement to actually shipping. So they've had a fair amount of time to make enough models. But yeah, I don't know how many have actually been pre-ordered either. So if you want one though, you can actually get one. Some cameras which were announced well over a year ago, you still cannot get because of short supply. One of my favourite things about the Ronin 4D is the wireless system. This is the wireless monitor that is extra, and you have the wireless transmitter which sits at the back of the camera between the battery and the camera. And the integration of that and the ability to have full control over your camera is a huge deal. It's so neat and so well implemented. And with the new firmware that's come out, so you have mirror mode, so you have literally full control over everything on here. And if you have the expansion port at the back, you can output a clean feed to an external monitor as well. So you can give that to your director or whatever. So incredibly useful. With the next firmware that's going to come out, you're going to be able to actually record proxies on the monitor as well via a micro SD card, but that's not here yet. The LiDAR autofocus system is an incredibly clever and big deal that is part of this camera and comes with it. Being able to use manual focus lenses with autofocus is incredibly impressive. And I really love that you can keep a subject in focus at f/0.95 on a full frame sensor, 35mm. That is clever technology. I did find though that there was no finesse with it. It was just a little bit too fast. There's no ability to slow it down. With the new firmware, the autofocus is much better, as we can get some really nice smooth focus racks. We have a low, medium and high setting here. Previously, everything was just super fast, like this high setting. The autofocus setting is listed in the menu as AFC sensitivity, which is slightly confusing to me, because the way that the spot focus is behaving is what is normally called focus speed. The sensitivity is something different. These are normally two separate things on traditional autofocus systems. When you're tracking a subject with the Sony system, the sensitivity only really comes into play when there's something that could distract it. So you generally keep it low to make sure it's locked on. The speed setting is overridden when it's tracking, so it can make sure that it keeps the subject in focus. Again, it only comes into play when there is something that gets distracted and how high that sensitivity is. If it's high, it's going to move quickly. When you have the speed high as well. But if you want the autofocus to shift to a new subject, what I normally would do on a Sony system is put that sensitivity up to the highest and get that speed quite low, but not too slow, just so it's nice and natural. The Ronin 4D system seems to have both the settings combined. When tracking, I found I had to keep it set to high to make sure that focus was maintained when I was moving around. If you have it set to medium, or slow of course, then the focus can't keep up. The problem is if you set to high and the subject is lost, this is what happens. You can get the Sony to behave this way, but you'd have to have both the sensitivity and speed set to the maximum, which you never do, because you never want this to happen. This is where the autofocus still needs to be tamed on the Ronin 4D. And I don't know what's possible with the LiDAR, but if DJI could separate the settings, so it'd be more like the Sony and other systems, then we could avoid this sort of thing and have much more consistent results. It's still way better than when I first used it, and especially for focus racks, so I have confidence they will keep improving it. This is the medium speed, and you can see as it racks onto my hand that it's pretty smooth. And this is a great lens for autofocus on this camera. It's a Sony 35 1.8, and it's lovely and smooth. Look how smooth the bokeh balls change as I move backwards and forwards. This lens has very, very minimal breathing, way less than the GM. So this is a great lens for this camera when you get that E-mount. The new firmware has also made the Sony E-mount that much better. Although it is a two-stage thing, you need to update the firmware in the camera and also update the lens mount separately. And you do need a Windows machine for that. Now, this E-mount is, as far as I'm concerned, an absolutely essential purchase for this camera, especially now, because you don't have to calibrate the lenses anymore. Just like when you put on a native DJI DL lens, you don't need to go through the whole really fiddly, go through different stages so the camera knows at which points the lens works at. It just goes on and it just works. You do need to adjust the balance still, which you don't need with DL lenses because they're all the same weight. But this is a hugely important thing, to be able to just simply have these lenses work with the autofocus just like that. And with the improvement in the autofocus, it's a nice, really nice combination. The E-mount is shipping, although there's not that many out there that I've seen. And you cannot get it through DJI directly because it isn't made by them. They haven't said who makes it. I think it's probably Viltrox, because Viltrox make the Z-mount one. And that's the only other active E-mount that I've seen on a camera, because Sony don't actually license it to other cameras. So yeah, but it is absolutely essential to get this, because it really opens up the camera to so many more lenses. You've got the DL and you've got the Leica M mount, and you can adapt things to the Leica M mount, but you can also adapt the Sony E mount to Leica M mount, and you can then put on the close focus adapter to get a close focus with that anyway. So yeah, I don't know if I've said it already, but I think the E mount is an absolutely essential purchase. One thing that I wish I got into more detail about in the main review, I touched upon it but didn't really go into much because there's so much to cover, is just how bloody good the user interface is on this camera. It is the best of any camera I have ever used, and it's better than Blackmagic on their Pocket 4K 6K, which was the best until this. It's incredibly good, incredibly intuitive, very responsive with the touch screen. It's all there. It is by far the best user interface I've ever seen. Every other camera manufacturer should take a good hard look at this user interface and see how a camera should operate. A great example is the amazing white balance tool that this camera has. With my Sony FX6, I have to hold up a white and fill the entire screen, press a button, and then it will do a white. It has to be the entire screen. Now the mirrorless cameras are better because you don't have to, you can just select a smaller area. But look how good it is with this camera. You move the camera around until the crosshair is on the white and it is showing you the actual color temperature as it's moving around. How good is this? This should be how we do white balances for all our cameras. Hopefully, camera manufacturers can take a good hard look at this and implement it in their cameras. I did mention that there is a change to the camera which isn't so good, and that sadly is the loss of ProRes RAW. I was surprised that it had it initially because I didn't think it was possible to get it licensed to be able to record internally. externally I know it's being done, but internally I didn't know any other camera that did it. You know, the Inspire 2 arguably is that, but it's a very unique thing. It's because of the patents about compressed RAW that a certain camera manufacturer has. So that was why I was surprised. But as far as I know, it was licensed, and for whatever reason, it has changed, and now it's gone. Well, if you get the camera right now, it is in there still. Mine still has it. It's just that when I come to update the firmware next, it will go, which is a shame. I don't personally use it that much myself, but it is nice to have a proper RAW format that is recording effectively internally, but now it's gone. DJI has not said whether it's going to come back or not. What they have said is they're going to add ProRes 4444 XQ to the camera, but that's fine, but it's not a RAW replacement. The advantage is it will work with DaVinci Resolve, which ProRes RAW doesn't. Huge disadvantages: the file sizes are absolutely enormous. I complained about the HQ file size, and also ProRes RAW HQ is also big, but that's nothing compared to 4444 XQ. It's a very high-end, high-budget Hollywood format. It's not for most people. You're going to eat through those SSDs. You need a lot of hard drives. It's not. I don't think you need it. I would much rather see some more compressed versions of ProRes LT and 422. And maybe, if it's possible, hardware-wise, maybe you'll need the additional module which goes onto the back, which hasn't come out yet, which has the XLRs and SDI, etc., to be able to record ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW out of that instead. Although Blackmagic RAW isn't proper RAW, but you know what I'm saying. It just means additional weight on the camera. And I've already said before, the camera's pretty heavy anyway. I just want to say a big thank you to Skillshare for their sponsoring me over the past couple of years. This video is sponsored by them, and it really does help make it possible to make these videos. And I've really enjoyed making my little integrations. I always try my best with them, and I've done some quite fun ones over the past 2 years. I think this may really surprise you, but I love cameras and I love cats. Some might say I have a bit of a problem.
All of us can feel overwhelmed, but there's so much to gain from kind of taking a personal look to figure out what's overwhelming us and what we can do about it.
I am worthy of your time, and I'm worthy of sharing what I've come to learn with you.
Are you feeling joyful right now? Or are you anxious? Or maybe just tired? When you face the blank page, are you filled with ideas?
What I would love for you to do now is to take the time to write down about 30 different interests, anything at all, just to get your brain kicking into gear. It could be as simple as you love your cat, you love your cat, you love your cat, you love your cat, you love your cat.
They're not all going to appeal to you. Some things are going to have no connection to you at all. They're always a great resource for helping me to figure things out. Not just in regards to what I do, but on all sorts of different topics that I sometimes need help with. I used to love painting, but I've not done it in years. Yeah, that does not look good. What a muppet. Let's see if I can brush up on it.
You want to make sure that focus is perfect, then you'll go straight over and manually adjust and it will lock it in.
Manually?
You kind of have to live with uploading a pretty dang good thing that's just about done versus trying to make the greatest thing ever seen by mankind.
Of course, me being me, I've come out again just to do a few last autofocus tests.
Hey, you're doing it again. Time to move on, Philip. You've talked about this one enough. Gotta get the video out.
Yeah, all right, yeah, you're right, okay. I'll move on to something else. I won't do any more autofocus tests. If, like Bert, you're interested in Skillshare, the first 1,000 people click the link in the description below will get 1 month free trial. I think he's gone off to do it right now. You can use my account. There's loads of other little improvements with the firmware, but I'm not going to go through every single thing. The camera still needs refining, of course, and there will be more firmware updates. There's going to be a big one in June, and one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, which hopefully will be in it, will be motion control. Around the same time, the 8K camera is due, and I would love to test it out. Hopefully they will make it available on its own. After all, the camera module of the 4D is removable. In the meantime, the Ronin 4D is now finally getting into the hands of customers, and I am really looking forward to seeing what people get from it. Just remember, if you're going to use one, try to use one with a Ready Rig or something similar. Look after your back. I thought I was invincible when I was younger. I wasn't.